There are different states our ports can be in when participating in the spanning tree process. They can be in the blocking state, the listening state, the learning state, the forwarding state, as well as the discarded state. Now, the discarded state occurs when the interface is administratively down or there is no link connected to the interface. As a result, it's disabled. It's not participating in the spanning tree process. Therefore, there's no need to send BPDUs, receive BPDUs, learn MAC addresses, or even send or receive any data at all. But the blocking state is a very, very important state because this blocking state is occurring because that port that's in that state is the best place within the topology to prevent the loop from happening. And this port will remain in the blocking state for an undefined amount of time. As long as the topology is stable and no changes are occurring, so links going up and down, which is going to cause spanning tree protocol to converge, then this port will stay in the blocking state for as long as it needs to make sure a loop is not occurring. So how does it know it has to remain in the blocking state? Simply from the reception of BPDUs from the upstream neighbor. Based on the BPDUs that are floating through the spanning tree topology, when this particular port receives the BPDU from the upstream neighbor, it realizes that it is the best place within the topology to block the loop. So there's no need to send BPDUs at this stage of the game. There's no reason to learn MAC addresses because there won't be any data being forwarded in or out of the interface. But what happens if a change does occur? Spanning tree converges. A link goes down as an example. Well, then spanning tree has to rebuild that topology. So the first transitionary state is listening. What are we listening for? Well, we're listening for BPDUs, but we're also sending BPDUs because we need to determine whether this port that's transitioning needs to be a root port or a designated port. So we're listening to BPDUs, we're sending BPDUs to ultimately determine whether that port should be a root port or a designated port. And we will determine that in the listening state because we spend 15 seconds in this listening state trying to determine that. But while we're doing this, there's no need to learn about MAC addresses. There's no need to send or receive data at all. Because we are trying to identify the currents, the spanning tree topology that's going to be implemented. Once the 15 seconds is up and the root port and designated port or whatever the role of this port is going to be has been determined, then the transition moves on to learning. We still send and receive BPDUs at that interface in the learning state because the switch has to make sure that it made the correct decision on that port. There's no mechanism in place that says, yeah, based on the entire topology, which I can see, no. You can't see the entire topology. You only see the information in the BPDUs you receive. So the switch port is not 100% sure whether it's the right decision that was made. So you continuously send and receive BPDUs in this state to make sure that, yes, the decision was made correctly and that all the devices are converging upon the same final spanning tree topology. But we can get ahead of the game here and start to learn some MAC addresses on that interface, which is very beneficial, speeding up the learning process of MAC addresses. But we're still not going to send and receive data at this interface because the switch is not 100% sure that it has guaranteed a loop-free topology just yet. It won't know that for sure until another 15 seconds expires. So during the transition process, you spent 15 seconds in the listening state and you spent 15 seconds in the learning state just to make sure that the decision that was made was accurate. Once the 15 seconds is up, you move on to the forwarding state. And in the forwarding state, you're going to send and receive BPDUs to continuously maintain that spanning tree topology, learn MAC addresses, and you'll forward frames in and out of the interface and spend an undefined amount of time within this forwarding state in that stable topology. So in a stable topology, you're going to find a lot of forwarding ports and a lot of blocking ports. But if your spanning tree topology continuously changes, which you don't want it to, then you're going to start to see these transitionary states show up periodically, listening and learning. Where can we examine the states? Well, we can examine them by taking a look at the output of show spanning tree on the switch. So ASW1, let's type in show spanning tree, but I only want to focus on VLAN 10 just to keep it simple for us. And I want you to notice here that Fast Ethernet 0/1 is a designated port in the forwarding state for VLAN 10. That's the interface going down to PC1. Fast Ethernet 0/2 is a designated port in the forwarding state going down to PC2. Gigabit 0/1 is the root port in the forwarding state going up to DSW1. And finally, look at gigabit 0/2. It's known as an alternate port in the blocking state. An alternate port in the blocking state. So right now we have a stable topology, but if anything changes, if a transition occurs, a link goes down. So spanning tree then has to do what? Converge? We'd see these states change for a brief moment in time to listening and learning as they transition from whatever state they're currently in to the forwarding state.